Welcome to our pod. By that, I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. Right now, we are peeking into the Greenbone Saga, and we are continuing our discussion of Jade Legacy, the book that broke 1,000 hearts.
Legacy.
It's breaking my heart.
You are in trouble. Like,
talk about like an epic, like a family epic. This is just so much in one book. I can't.
Hannah, this book is a lot. And I'm just going to say right off the top of the episode, I told Hannah before we started, but I have already finished the book. I had some extra time and I only had my Kindle available to me. So I finished the book and I'm going to do my best not to spoil things. But let me just say, since we last talked, I've been reading this book. I have cried. I have been angry. I have had all of the emotions, and I am broken. This book has broken me.
I literally don't know how Fonda Lee got me to care about Mike Tarr, but boy, was I almost sobbing at the end of that story.
Oh my gosh.
Guys, we're going to get into it.
We'll get there.
I was so sad. It's not a spoiler because we're covering it in this episode, but like, oh my God. It broke me.
That was one of the parts that had me sobbing.
I was like about to cry. I think the only thing that saved me is I started talking about how good the book is, like from a plot perspective. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, oh, thank God, because I was going to cry
out of it.
I was going to cry over Mike Tarr.
I did cry over Mike Tarr. I was sobbing and
it's so good, guys.
I will not say the other part because I know it happens in the next part.
Oh, yeah, you can't say it.
Gosh.
Okay, you can't say it then. All right, guys.
But I've had a full range of emotions, and I just went on Goodreads and updated it, and this book has been added to my favorites list. This book is astoundingly good. It is so poetic and beautiful and dangerous and
Fonda Lee did in one book what like Wheel of Time tried to do in 8. Like, I don't know how, like, I don't know.
Remember when we talked about like, oh, if somebody would rewrite Wheel of Time, who would we have do it? Maybe we should have Fonda Lee rewrite it, and it'll be 3 books.
Yeah,
it'll be so much
very quick. Better. Like, yeah, I would feel so many things. But before we get into it, Laura, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
Okay, so based on some more recommendations on Discord, I read A Sign of Affection, Volume 1 by Sue Morishita. And first of all, I cannot find Volume 2 anywhere, and I may have to use the Force, the dark side of the Force, to acquire the next few volumes because it's not available through my library, like not even to like suggest that they get it. I don't know why that's a thing that they don't have it on there. So it was not available on Amazon either, like the ebook, and I'm like, where is this? Why is this book nowhere? But this book is following a college student named Yuki who is deaf. And she is kind of, having the typical college experience, and she comes across a student. It's Suomi-san, and she's interested, and she is kind of trying to figure out if this could be a thing. And they had met on a train, and they keep kind of bumping into each other and decide to become friends, and are now starting to become maybe more than friends. But their relationship, as they're trying to get to know each other and communicating, is so sweet and so pure. And I'm like in love with this first volume, and that's why it's so frustrating to me that I can't get the second volume. But I love the representation of this book, where we have the miscommunications that you would have between a person who is hard of hearing or deaf and someone who is hearing. And I love how they're making it very realistic in this volume where they're using their phones, you know, to like show text messages that they're sending to each other, or just like typing into a notes app and sharing that way, or writing on something, or they're showing each other how to sign, and he's learning sign language to communicate with her. I just think that this book is so like realistic and also sweet.
Yeah.
I'm loving this recommendation for me, because this is definitely something that I'm interested in. Real world representation and disability representation. A+ rec for me.
Yeah.
I just need to use the dark side of the force to get more.
Right.
Or
I don't know why they don't have it.
Use the power within you.
I love your dark side voice, Laura. You should read the entire book.
That was my Palpatine impression.
Oh, good.
But the other thing that I've been reading, I've been doing about a volume a night, is Witch Hat Atelier.
Okay.
By I'm gonna butcher this name, so people, I am really, really sorry. It's so the translator is Stephen Kohler, but the author is Kamome Shirahama. Hopefully I said that right. Please tell me the correct pronunciation. But this takes place in a world where magic and spells and things like that are just, it's a fantasy world, but things are kind of normalized. You know, they accept witches within their society, and witches are kind of like this almost higher class who come to help people with things. And this girl named Coco comes across a witch and learns or discovers how they are able to perform magic, which is a big secret. And because she is able to observe this, she tries to perform some magic on her own, and it ends up with some pretty bad consequences. And the witch that she had observed sees her performing this magic and ends up taking her under his wing and making her an apprentice. And she goes to live with them in the atelier, and there are other apprentices there around her age, and they're all trying to like go through these tests to see if they can become witches. And Coco's also trying to see if she can kind of right some of the wrongs that she has done and learn and grow as well, because she's got a little catching up to do, because she wasn't born, you know, with a gift for magic. But this is such a wholesome series, and the art is really beautiful. I'm loving some of the cityscapes and the way that even like bricks are drawn on the streets and on the buildings. It's really pretty, and I've been just eating this up, mainly because it's very available to me through my library, where I can just read a volume a night and then get the next one instantly. So that accessibility is a key when it comes to some of these mangas, I think. That's fair. This is a very popular one that I've realized that a lot of people on Bookstagram have already like known about this for a long time, because I just searched like a hashtag for it and there were tons of posts. So I'm way behind on knowing anything about manga, because this is just a really popular one, but obviously for good reason, because it's incredibly wholesome. And I just love the interactions between the girls and learning about their backstories and learning more about the witches. And there are some kind of darker storylines that are being dispersed in between here, and some interesting things that we're kind of learning about as we go along. I think that that's kind of a thing I've noticed with graphic novels and serials, that they start off with like a really strong book to get you hooked, and then as they go along, they kind of just like piece in little bits of like other plots to keep you interested, so you keep reading along. And it's extremely clever, good marketing on them, and it's hooked me because I need to know more about this darker plot, and it's extremely interesting to me. But it's a really great series, Hannah. I think you would really like this one. It's almost like I would say that it's got a lot of the similar like darker tones that you would get in Monsters. Obviously it's not near as dark and violent, but some of the plot lines that are kind of coming in remind me a lot of like some of the plots that we see in Monstrous. So I think you would enjoy this one if you're looking for something a little bit lighter hearted and fun.
So I'm part of a writing group, and someone like in my writing group is working on a graphic novel that they're going to like publish on a website. And the second they do, I will be sending you the link, Laura,
Yes.
because I've been reading like his different versions of it, and it's so fun to watch like how different like graphic novels and mangas can change as time goes on, or mangas,
Yes.
apologies, because like every time I see his, like everyone has a different perspective. But as someone who's
Mhm.
like lightly dabbled in graphic novels, I've learned that like sometimes people who are like, fiction readers and everything, they'll be like, I just don't quite understand what's going on here. And I was like, oh yeah, it's a graphic novel. I just assumed that you didn't want us to, or like assumed I'd
Right.
catch up later. And I realized like that is such a fun part of the graphics and mangas, where you like get to go on side quests that like don't always matter as much to the plot line,
Mhm.
but they're fun and they like show different art forms, or like you go on these little things where it's like, is this person important? Oh no, they're no longer important. They're just like showing this deeper world like building thing in such a unique way. And I think that that's such a unique experience with mangas and graphic novels, and I love them so much, and I wish more people got into them because of that.
I feel like there's such a stigma surrounding graphic novels and mangas, like in comics too,
Mm-hmm.
where, and I was part of this for a very long time. And I was just kind of like, oh no, they're for kids. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've aged out of that. That's not for adults. Adults can't read those. And that's totally false. Like read whatever you want. I love Percy Jackson. So read whatever you want. But it's it's definitely a thing where you can have
Mm-hmm.
certain issues that just go off on like a random plot that
Mm-hmm.
has nothing to do with what you just read. You could have just left off on like the biggest cliffhanger at the end of the issue beforehand. And then you enter the next issue and it's like, wait a minute, we're in a completely different country doing
Mm-hmm.
something totally different. Wait, what? Now we're in a boat and we're traveling over to this and dealing with mermaids. And it's like, what? How did we get here? And then all of a sudden in the next issue, you're back where you were before. And it's like, this was slightly related to what was going on, and I'm unsure how it ties in, but it was enjoyable. And I think
Exactly.
it's just there's so much room for there's just a lot of flexibility, like you said, within
Mm-hmm.
graphic novels and mangas. And I think that it's what keeps people interested and also just makes them fun.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
And
I
you
really
don't have
like
a lot of
this.
that flexibility when you're reading an actual novel where it's like people are going to complain instantly on Goodreads if they're
Right.
like the plot wasn't very tight. Like, yeah, I suppose if one chapter they go off, but you're never going to see an argument like that about like a volume of a graphic novel if they do something like
Well,
that.
I wonder if because it is like a visual art form, if you're more likely to be forgiving, where it's like, oh,
Oh, absolutely.
I'm here for the visual. I'm here for to see what the artist wanted to do with these pages. And so it is like a little bit more of a fun thing to just consume,
Mhm.
because I definitely love that. Because like I've read two huge volumes of The Sandman, and like there's so
Mhm.
many tangential plot lines where it's like, why did he have to go to hell for this specific reason? And it's like,
Sure.
oh, just a character build. Like
Right.
it's not important outside of that. Why would it be important? Like,
I will say I have your copy of volume 1, I
yes,
believe, and it's a big book,
it's
but
the
I have started reading it a couple times and the font is so difficult for me that I've had to stop.
it
I
is a
don't
very
know.
difficult font.
That font is really tricky, and I'm somebody that I am visually impaired. Like
Yeah.
I have to wear glasses to see. And it makes it really difficult for me to read small fonts and stuff like that
Mhm.
in books, where I have a couple books actually. Like I have a Colson Whitehead book that I've been wanting to read, and every time I pick that one up, the font is really tiny, so it
Mm.
immediately makes me DNF. Like
I
I'll get 5 pages in a DNF, but that Sandman volume, it's like the font is small and also weird.
it's like
And
indented, and it's like it's supposed to be
yeah,
character driven, and it is a very strange font. And I think it's very
it's
80s
very
and
difficult
very
to
like,
read.
yes. So I totally get that. And if
But
also
the art
Sandman
is
is,
great. Like if
it
I just
is.
looking at the pictures, I'm like, oh, cool. But then I don't know what's happening. So I need to read it, but
Yeah.
my eyes don't like the font.
You need to become one of those old ladies with the magnifying glasses. And you're just like blowing it up.
I mean, that's what my glasses are, but it's still not enough.
Oh, that's amazing. I will say that I was on a trip recently with one of my sisters, and she had recently gotten a Kindle Paperwhite. And you know how you like look
Uh-huh.
over someone's shoulders? Her font was on the smallest font size that a Kindle can be. And I was like, are you a serial killer? Like, what are you doing right now? And she goes, this is normal size font, Hannah. And I like brought up the Fonda Lee book I was reading and the like normal size font, and I held it up, and she was like, okay, so maybe it's a little small.
It's at like a 4-point.
What's that? Like a 1 point? Like, it's the smallest font size you can get on a Kindle. And I was like, that is too small to be reading. There's like, I was like, your Kindle can blow up font size as much as you need. It's not that big of a deal to hit the page more often. Like, what are you doing? So I'm
actually someone who has on a couple of occasions accidentally checked out the large print version of a book.
Yeah.
And I'm all for it because it's much easier to read. I don't care if it's a chunker. My
problem is not eyesight. My problem is getting arthritis slowly in my hands. So the large font would not work for me. It would bring pain.
I have this thing that it's like a little like pillow easel thing that I set my books on, and so it's perfect for bed and stuff because it's like kind of soft, and it'll just like kind of hold the book open for me.
When you gave me a little like holder opener thing. I need to sand it a little bit more because like the edge hits the page in a weird way that like hits my ears weird, and I'm a sound person who like weird sounds bother me.
My sister says it's textury. That's how she describes it. She says I'm textury, which is just kind of an excuse to not touch certain things.
I'm also textury, but it's also like sitting on the page, so I need to use that more, but I do need to sand it down. And I always remember that where I'm like, my arthritis is packing up, and I'm like, Laura literally bought me something or got me something. Your dad made it for me.
My dad made it.
Lovely. Yeah. It's so nice of her and her dad. But I was like, Laura literally got me something to fix this. I just need to fix like one little thing about myself before I can use it. I think I just need to put more stain on it or something. But random thoughts about what Laura and my issues are when we're reading. I'm textury, guys.
I have, and my other thing too is like light for me and this is maybe just because my eyes are so bad, but like when I am reading a book, I need pretty much all the lights on in the room. And like I have a book light that I use to read in bed with because my husband will go to sleep and I'll be using that light. But if it starts to even die at all, I have to just plug it in and start over because that's not going to work. So a lot of times I've found, and I think that's why I've been leaning on my Kindle a lot recently, is because I can adjust the light setting and read in bed easier. So like physical books, I've been reading more during the daytime when it's light and I can, have the sun directly shining on me at noon.
Laura, the brightest possible.
Yeah, I'm definitely not a vampire because I have to be out in direct sun to be able to see anything.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Have you ever, okay, this is again just a light thing. Have you ever been driving like right before the sun sets?
Yes.
That is the worst possible time to drive.
Oh,
you cannot see anything.
You
cannot see anything. I don't know why people think it's harder to drive when it's completely dark. You have headlights and that makes it a lot easier to see. But when it's that time when it's just about ready for the sun to go down, horrible.
I was once driving down Texas back roads with one of my friends from LA, and she didn't know what brights were. Like, it was really dark. And I was like, well, turn your brights on. And she was like, what do you mean? It's like,
Here's my thing. Are people in LA in like their own little world? Like they have perfect weather.
Yeah.
They can just
they're like, literally in their own little world. They don't understand.
Realize like they don't have bad weather. They just can like, they're living literally in La La Land.
Right.
Like they don't realize some of these things exist. Like, what? Snow? What? You have bright lights because it gets dark? Like, it's always wonderful and bright here and everyone's singing. Like, really? Come on.
Yeah, so she didn't know what brights were. So that always makes me think of it where it's like, do people actually hate driving in the dark, or do they just not know how to drive on like dark backcountry roads? Because like, if you don't know to turn on your brights and drive with that, like if you only experience cities or like you were never in an area where you often had to use your brights, because like you and I definitely had to use our brights. Like that was one of the first things I learned how to use.
Out here.
Yeah, you have to use them in order to see anything. And so you just learn very specific skills, but also I was terrible about driving in a city until I was like 21. So you win some, you lose some. But
yeah, I think I just have really bad eyes, and I'm light sensitive. So like in the winter when it's super bright and the sun's shining off the snow, perfect time for me to be driving. But I definitely use my brights a lot and rely on the headlights on my car. I can't imagine like not knowing about that. I thought you were going to say that maybe your friend didn't have brights in their car.
Oh no, they
that
did.
It was just like not there, and I was like, oh, it's interesting that that feature wouldn't be available. But
Yeah,
okay, I gotcha that they just didn't realize, because LA is wonderful and always bright
better.
and sunny, and
Must be
the rest
nice.
of the world is in a dark hole. Hannah, what have you been reading and watching and enjoying?
So I have a couple audiobooks to talk about, just some fun ones. I recently listened to Jane Peck's The Verifiers. It was a weird book, but I enjoyed it. Like, I don't think it was good by any means, but it was enjoyable, if you know what I mean. But it follows this girl who named Claudia, who like works for this agency that does background checks on dating app people who they're like, I want to date this person, but it feels like they're fishy and they're lying about who they say they are. Like, I'm going to hire you guys to look into them. And so they do this
with dating apps.
Well, and so this is what makes the book a little bit, it was almost like too unrealistic.
Yeah.
For the actual plot of the novel to happen. But like, they do jump through some logical hoops of like, oh, well, when you sign on to join this dating agency, you do sign away some of your rights, and we have access to those rights and those softwares that you sign away your rights to, so we can look into this for you. And so usually they'll like look into it. Well, there is a person who hires them, and she's like, this one guy seems too perfect, but he keeps pushing me to like go to this place and I don't get it. And then she ends up committing suicide. And so like the entire office like, drop it, but Claudia can't drop it, and she looks into it. I would say like the actual premise of the novel is very silly and very unrealistic. It's fun as like a mystery, but it was just way too out of left field to like have all these connections hit for me to like be like, oh, this is such a great mystery. I think it was good as a mystery because it like left you breadcrumbs that you could pick up on and solve the mystery. And I think that is a very effective mystery to write, but like some of the logic stuff didn't make sense. But I will say that it is also the story of like complicated family dynamics. Because throughout the story, you find out that Claudia has an older brother and sister, who their mom, when she went to America, left them behind. And I believe, let me double check. In China, I believe. Then like Claudia was born in America, and she was with her mom the entire time. And then later on, the mom goes back and she gets the kids, but she's not like the most loving mom. She is like, she has some of the things that people would call like stereotypical Chinese parent, you know, where she's never happy with them. And it kind of,
she's like the overbearing parent that always wants them to be like high achievers.
Yes. And you find out that their dad was also a very terrible man, and he ended up deserting their family. And like they kind of persevered, but you do like, I thought it was a very good book. I think that some of the unrealisticness was saved by some of the realistic things of like complicated family dynamics, because throughout the book, like you find out that the brother reacted to some of the tumultuousness in their childhood through like being the overachieving perfect son who's going to make sure everyone does everything. But then you find out he also brings like a lot of baggage where he like took care of Claudia a lot, but also was trying to make her perfect to quote unquote be worthy of as much of their mother's love as they got. And Claudia is kind of like, well, that's not on me that I received that. Like, I didn't ask for that, you know. And then you have her sister who it like resents how much she's loved and like makes comments and like isn't always as kind and everything. And so it's just a very interesting look at the different dynamics with them, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. But and it was just very complicated. And I think I'm always interested in complicated family dynamics because that's like what I grew up with sometimes.
Mhm.
And so it's interesting to see kids react in very realistic but different ways, and seeing kind of some of the resentment and issues come to fruition. And it should also be said that this is a very good book because Claudia is gay in this book,
Hmm.
and like her siblings know, but they keep pressuring her to tell her their mom, and she's like, well, I just don't know how my mom will react,
Sure.
and it had like a very good ending towards that kind of thing. Um, and it was very validating and very cute. So I thought it was enjoyable. I give it 3 stars. I don't think it's like the best book you're ever going to read, but if you wanted to pass the time away with a quick audiobook, it passes the time. It's a fun mystery,
Okay.
even though it's one of the most unrealistic things I've ever heard, where I'm like, I don't think it works like that, but okay.
Sure.
And then for another one, I read Lev or AC Rosen's Camp via audiobook.
Okay, I'm picturing the cover of this. Is it like a sigil? Like,
Yes.
what are those? They're not sigils. What are
Like
they,
a
Hannah?
camp. It's like
Patches.
like a patch. Yep. That's his camp on it. And it has like an LGBTQ flag tent
Yeah.
and 2 boys holding hands. Yes. So I listened to this audio and it was so freaking cute. It was just
Oh.
adorable and I loved it so much. So um and it just like has some of the best messaging and some of the best plotting for a very complicated storyline. So in it we have like a 16-year-old named Randy Keppelhoff. He has been coming to a summer camp that is meant for gay and queer teens, Camp
Mhm.
Outland. uh and he has always like been in the like theater camp. He loves theater, he loves everything about it. He is like just super into everything. He has a little bit more like femme in his presentation, or like, no, I don't want to say femme, that's inappropriate and inaccurate, but he he just likes to do certain things that are not stereotypically male. So he likes,
Okay.
singing, he paints his nails, he likes long hair,
Okay.
but he has been obsessed with this boy who is a lot more masculine. And Randy decides to change everything about himself. Well, not everything. He still wants to be himself on the inside, but he wants to become a little bit more like the men that this boy likes,
Mhm.
Hudson. And so over an entire year, Randy became Dell, who is a buff masculine man who like buzzed his hair. He doesn't wear nail polish. And he like just decides to change himself to be like more like what Hudson would want, because
Mhm.
the year before you're not allowed to have your phones on like at camp, but they like turned on, one of his friends turned on their phone and opened a dating app, and Hudson very specifically in a dating app said mask, looking for mask. And so he decides to come back to camp. He lies about never have, he doesn't really lie, but he like evades the truth of never having been here before, and does actually end up lying to Hudson about that. And he like decides to get Hudson to fall for him, and hijinks ensue. Like a ton of the camp knows that he's doing this, but everyone's kind of rooting for him. And it's a very, very cute story because like he still tries to be himself on the inside. He does tell him like certain things about him to make him fall for himself. Um, but then like, as the truth comes out, there is a lot of struggles and a lot of like internal homophobia coming from Hudson. And there's a lot of like discovering yourself and discovering what it means to be who you really are and who to be true to
Yeah.
yourself. I thought the messaging in this novel was so great because it talks about like some like queer phobia that comes with like, are people in the ace community considered queer? Like there are people there who
Oh.
are like, I'm part of this community, but some people treat me as if I'm not. There is a look at like, you can't just look down on theater kids because you think that they're stereotypically queer, like everything
Mhm.
is queer. You are who you are. And it just had some of the best messaging. It was a very complicated story. There were certain moments where like something bad happens and one of the teachers is there to be like, what happened wasn't okay. You can still understand why it happened and it can still not be okay.
Mhm.
And I thought that was great messaging. And it's just very cute, very hard at the end. You want something to be different than it is, but it's still like a very realistic look at a young adult novel on what it means to be queer in this day and age, especially with like family members and everything and in between. So I really, really suggest reading this book. It's a YA novel, but it is so much bigger than that. Like I thought this was
Sure.
really good. And I loved like learning more about Randy, learning about his like friendships and everything. Like one of his friends has changed over the summer, but he's like, no, I want to be 100% real me. And like, it stinks when other people can't see the real me, so it's a good story. So I suggest everyone go pick it up because I adored it. I thought it was
Well, you've
super
convinced
cute.
me.
Yeah, like I
That sounds
really
exactly like something I would love.
I was like mowing the lawn with this book, trying not to cry. And like it was so heartfelt. So definitely that.
So a good audio too. It's
a good audio.
You'd say would be great on audio.
I think it's a great audio. And the narrator has like Randy's voice down pat. Like it sounds very authentic and very realistic. And I enjoyed the audiobook so much. So highly recommend.
Cool.
And then another audio, I've been on like a huge audio kick just because I've been reading a giant book called Jade Legacy and tomorrow and all these other books. But I read Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. It is a very small, short novel, but I did it via audio, or it's not a novel. It's it's kind of like an autobiography, but it's a conversation with Ta-Nehisi and his son, and what it means raising him and being Black and American in the context of American history. It's very beautiful. It's very hard to listen to because there's a lot of complex discussions. And it talks about like, Chicago to Paris, what it means to travel abroad when you're Black, and what it means to like confront the present as someone who hopes that the world will be better for their son, but recognizing that their son might not be as safe as they wanted to. And how, the Black body is treated. And, it says that it feels like there's something between him and the world. And that's why it's called Between the World and Me. And it's a very beautiful, very short book. And I think it's a wonderful premise because it's just very interesting to listen to. So I would suggest all three of those audiobooks. But
didn't Ta-Nehisi Coates also write The Water Dancer? Is that another one?
Yes.
Okay.
Ta-Nehisi Coates is a very prolific person, I believe. He was a journalist for a very long time.
Yes. And I know this because he is mentioned on Dear White People.
Oh, yes.
TV show.
I've also read a portion of his book. I never finished it, but it was We Were 8 Years in Power, An American Tragedy. And it's an article for every year that Barack Obama was president and complex feelings that came in each of those years and what was happening in those years in history, which is also very good. And, for Black Joy, he also writes a lot of Black Panther novels to bring us back to like graphic novels and comics. And yes. And so he does that as well. So he's a pretty cool person. So yeah, go read
wide range of genres for sure.
Very wide range, and he speaks beautifully. He's very good. So everyone go read.
Okay, so he narrated the book as well.
Yes, he did.
Cool.
Just sometimes what I love about autobiographies, they're like more likely to be done by the person.
Yeah.
Which is fun because right now I'm also listening to Tom Hanks read a book, and I'm like, this is strange.
Oh, really? Is it an Ann Patchett book?
Yes, it's an Ann Patchett book. Yes. How did you know about
what one
this?
Is it?
It's
the Dutch House.
Yeah, I'm listening to the Dutch House right now, and I'm like,
yeah,
Tom Hanks, what are you doing in here?
Yeah, I started listening to that one, and then I just couldn't get over the Tom Hanks of it all. So I stopped and was like, I think I'll just have to get an ebook or
I have
print
a physical
version.
I have a print version of the book if you want me to bring it to you sometime, and you can not listen to
sure.
Tom Hanks.
Because I had tried. Tom Hank. I had tried listening to Tom Han. Whatever point they're at
He's
now.
Lost his K in his ass.
Jamie Loftus continues to remove letters from Tom Hanks's name
when he's in his flop era.
but I think sometimes when it's a celebrity narrator, it can be distracting, if that makes sense.
I think it helps that I just keep imagining him like an alternate world where instead of Forrest Gump, Tom Han was this child.
I guess. And I don't even feel that connected to Forrest Gump, I guess, as Tom Hanks's thing. I just think of him like in everything almost, where it's just like, it's too much Tom Hanks. And
just so you know, he is now Tom Ha because the Dutch House also flopped for Laura.
Tom H. But yeah, sometimes I enjoy having a celebrity narrator, and other times I'm like, this is distracting, where I'm not going to be able to focus on the book because I'm going to be too like interested in being like, oh yeah, I remember when he was this voice in this movie that was animated, Toy Story 3, or anything.
Woody, what are you doing in this book? There's a snake in
if
my
Buzz
book.
pops up in this, I'm gonna be pissed.
You have got to get away
Buzz
from that man. He is horribly Republican.
I cannot stand that. But yeah, I have like listened to some books that are like Santino Fontana has narrated a couple of audiobooks that I've listened to, and I think he does a really good job, but I don't think that he's popular enough that I've seen him in that many things. I've only seen him in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and I know that he's the voice of Prince Hans or whatever his name is in Frozen. So it's like not enough things where I'm like distracted and trying to pick out the voice constantly.
I'm surprised you haven't listened to his music in the wonderful Tony Award-winning film play Tootsie.
Yeah, I have constantly.
Oh, okay.
But he doesn't usually sing in audiobooks.
That's fair.
So, but I don't know. I think there's something in my brain that just like wants celebrities sometimes to kind of just stay in their lane. I don't know.
That's fair, especially with
leave it to the voice actors and the Julia Waylands and Travis Baldry. Like, leave it to them.
Okay, fair enough. All right, but yeah, that's pretty much all we've been reading this week. Yeah. Should we dive into chapters 22 through 42?
Let's do it, and I will do my best not to spoil. Hannah is going to reach through the Zoom call and grab my hair.
Or just message you saying, please stop. You're going to have to cut this out later.
You're going to have a lot of editing to do, Laura, if you spoil the ending of Jade Legacy.
Oh my gosh, please stop. So we come on the 14th year that we were in. Rue and Nico are sneaking into the mountain territory to see Otto fight a duel with a fellow mountain person who challenged him. It's kind of known that this is just good press for Ike to get more grain and to kind of show off his power. But there's always, they're always like, Rue is like, but there was always danger in fighting. And it was like, is there? I don't feel like there is, but okay.
Like we've reached a point that it's less dangerous and more about the tabloidness of it all. And
especially with the Coben family who like hires the press when they go out to like go to the bathroom.
Yeah. And I think for Otto, it's one of those situations where it's like everything that he does is trying to kind of prove that he's going to be the charismatic leader who is also strong. So they're just trying to produce a good image. And that's also what this duel is about. It's not really going to be a life or death situation.
Yeah. So there's just like, it's very funny, but they both skip school, both Nico and Rue. You find out
Nico doesn't really want to. And Rue is the one that's super interested.
The world is on my literal shoulders every minute of every day. Could we not do this? And Rue's like, you're supposed to be the pillar. You're supposed to be daring. You need to be here. Where would you be other than here? So
Rue has annoyingly taken on the trait of Hilo where he's like, I uphold all the clan standards and think that we all need to be following the loyalty of our parentage.
What if we reproduce Lon and Hilo and not Shay, because that girl is definitely not Shay.
The annoying parts of them where it's you know who's going to be ridiculously loyal to the clan? Rue. You know who's going to be ridiculously angsty?
Nico, but Nico also loves book.
I mean, it's good reason.
I love book. I know later when he has a fight with Hilo, I'm just like, wow, this is so accurate, and you're not listening to him at all. But anyway, so Rue's like, Nico, you need to take charge. You need to do this.
You really need to try to act like you're interested in the clan if you're going to be the next leader. Like, this is your responsibility.
Literally going to have to be the pillar. And he's like, why does birthright mean I have to do what I don't want to do?
Look, here's the thing. I've never been interested in MMA. And
I've never been interested in This is your life, Dad. It's not mine. Like, that's pretty much what he's doing throughout this entire book. This is your life. It was never mine. It was never mine.
I have never been interested in this.
I don't want to do MMA. This is so stupid. It's become more MMA. It used to actually be karate. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
It used to actually be martial arts. Now it's MMA.
Seriously, we've really just kind of boiled this down too much.
It's also noted that like they're trying to hide their faces, but Rue's like, well, I mean, Hilo keeps our faces out of the press, like come hell or high water.
Hilo keeps Rue out of the press.
But he also tries to keep Nico and Jaya as much as he can. Like he recognizes like, oh, we can't do everything, but he does a much better job than the Copans who are like, hey, Otto, look, a camera, walk in front of it.
Right. Well, somebody looked in that direction. Go over there.
You know, those outfit of the day, like, ooh, it's my ooh to D. I was like, this is my ooh to D, guys. He's on
just
TikTok.
chilling. It's like laying in bed. Just woke up, laying in bed with makeup on.
Day in the life of a future pillar. And he does like the little peace sign.
The peace sign in the duck lips.
Yep, exactly.
Let me just say a quick aside. So my cousin has a 3-year-old daughter, and it cracks me up to no end that the 3-year-old daughter will take his phone and the mom's phone as well and take selfies doing a little peace sign with the duck lips. And it's the cutest thing with her chubby little cheeks, her chubby little hands doing
that's
amazing. Duck lips. But yeah, that's Otto. Just like
that's Otto. It's so perfect. They watch the fight. Otto obviously wins. Rue knows it's rigged, but was super excited. As they're leaving, Rue sees some people tagging the wall with the phrase "free kick on" from Jade and Tyrants, and they're like spray painting pictures of his dad and Shay and you know all the people, and he's
all of their
pissed.
relatives basically.
Yeah, all of
Which
them.
Would be upsetting, you know. If you do agree with some of the stuff, it's like it's still upsetting to see somebody like paint a picture of your mom and say,
but also,
this woman sucks so bad.
Rue is sitting there like, we must beat them up. And it's like, well, they're adults and you are children. So maybe like get to safety again.
This is his Hilo showing. This is his, like, we have to defend our parents' honor.
And Nico's like, dude, we need to leave. Like, this is not our fight. We're in mountain territory. This is not a bad idea. And
we shouldn't be
here.
We
must stop them. A bunch of people are ignoring it in the streets, but Rue's yelling and then pulls out his Talon knife. And the people are like, so now we have to take notice. And the taggers are getting frustrated with children trying to attack them. Suddenly a car pulls up. It's June. All the taggers scatter, and he has some of his fingers go after the clanless that are there. And the mountain shows up with a fist, and they're both like, "You good?" And he's like, "We good. We got what we came for. We're leaving. We good. We good. We good. Okay." And he's like, "Go after the clanless. This is what they look like." June like shoves the kids in the car, and he's like, "What are you guys doing here?" And Rue's like, "It was fine. It was fine. We weren't doing anything wrong. You missed school. Do you not think we immediately get orders that you might have been kidnapped if you guys missed school and you're unaccounted for?"
I will say that like children often live in their own world where they think like they are able to control their own schedule and stuff like that. And they don't realize like, oh no, people are actually like looking out for you, and someone has made you dinner and is wondering why you're not there to eat it.
Sometimes
after they washed your underwear, they're wondering where you are.
Yeah, well, and sometimes if you miss school, they call home to be like, why didn't you call them off?
Right.
And so June is like, Rue is like, but the clan list. And then June's like, yeah, we'll take care of them, but like, come on. And then Rue immediately is like, don't tell our parents we were in the mountain territory. And Nico is like, you're an idiot. Of course, they already know. The mountain knew, Rue. Like, come on. And then
that's another thing too. Like kids like think they are so good at keeping secrets, and also like that parents don't, like adults don't know about things that they're discovering. And it's like, Rue, we obviously know about the CFM.
Yeah.
We obviously knew you were gone. Like,
but then like Nico knows exactly what's coming to them. And he's like, yeah, it was my idea. We go into enemy territory. And Rue is like, what? WTF? I'm the one who did this. I'm the one who goes after things. And doesn't get that Nico's like, dude, one of us is going to get like beat up for doing this. And I'm taking the blame. And like, I'm doing what a pillar actually needs to do, which is taking responsibility for our actions. but like he does, like Rue has complicated emotions because he also knows Nico is trying to protect him, but he also has his own stance with the clan. It's complicated. We cut on over to Wen, who's at a film festival, and she has become friends with Jurya, the abuke from the last section, or Jahuya. And she, like, where she talked about non-radioactivity, she talks to someone about getting No P clan involved with the film industry, and she's like, well, I have the ear of a certain pillar. Then she convinces Hilo to go to Marcucio, or Marcuco, which is an area that is known for visitors and has lots of gambling, but it also treats Greenbones as entertainment. And Hilo's like, why are we going there? And she's like, I heard it's up and coming. And she's like, ha, I have different wants and needs from this. She
There's
also
an
talks,
ulterior motive.
it also like kind of bums me out because in the section Wen admits that she still walks a very fine line of being Hilo's peeler man, where like she can't talk to him openly like Shay and white bread wound do. She has to like handhold Hilo into getting her to do what she wants. So while they're there, they kind of relax, and then she's like, oh, I have us signed up to go meet entertainment people. And he's like, yeah, I knew you always had an ulterior motive, but also I needed you to do this so I wouldn't get mad at you. And he like stuns everyone. He's very charismatic, and he gets like a director, like producer man, Sian Kugo, to become a lantern man for the No Peak clan, and he gets Darren films that will represent Kekanese people in a better light and not just to be like thugs and gang members. Right. So then we cut on over to Barrow, who finally gets invited over to Emma's apartment, and they sleep together.
You suck so bad.
Barrow always sucks so bad, and he will always come out on top probably. Don't tell me if he doesn't, Laura.
Barrow, I hate Barrow.
Laura technically turned off her video screen because I think the internet connection is unstable. But actually,
it was right when you mentioned Barrow, and
it was. So I just might have thought Laura like
couldn't show me.
Yeah.
I was leaving the chat because I couldn't handle talking about Barrow.
Or you at least were like, I can't hide on my face what happens to him, so I must leave.
I should do that. Just like reappear briefly, make a face, leave. Just to fake you out.
He like sees in Emma's apartment like a picture of her family. He looks and he discovers like one of her brothers was a Greenbone. She warns him something big is going to happen the next day and gives him an address of where to go. And he's like, why are you finally doing this? And she's like, I don't know. You seem fine. He calls the Aspedians and he tells them everything but the address that she gave him. The next chapter,
which is curious because I'm like, usually this guy has no emotional attachment to anyone and is so willing to just sell somebody out, even somebody that it's like, yeah, he just had sex with them and that's kind of all he was interested in. I'm shocked that he
actually
withheld
cared.
that he had some like wherewithal to be like, you know what, I might hold a little bit back.
Yeah, and so he does, and Hilo is at a meeting with the KJA. They're discussing the offshore Aspedian mining and the fact that they hired mercenaries, including Jim Sunto. Aitmata is like, wow, it would have been nice if like people didn't give him power. And Hilo's like, shut up, we're not friends anymore. Okay, Aitmata. We find out that Woon is there in Shay's stead, who just had their baby Tia. She is 2 weeks old. And the Koban man is there being a confirmed nationalist and just screaming about anyone who is not Kekanese. Like he's just like, and another thing I hate about foreigners.
Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity.
And another thing about foreigners. Like he's just screaming. So he was kind of sitting there just thinking poorly of everyone and being like, this is stupid. Then he gets a warning to leave the meeting, like someone delivers him an envelope. He shows it to Woon, and Woon's like, I'm not gonna leave you. And he's like, get out now. You have a daughter to think about. I'm coming right after you. But of course, Hilo's like, I want to stay in the room and see who's untrustworthy. And it's like, Hilo, get out. Like
this was a really tense moment. So you knew something bad was going to happen when the next chapter, it was like they're at the KJA. You're like, oh shit, this is what was going on. But when Woon gets that note, I immediately was thinking Aitmata is going to do something here. And somebody had tipped off No Peak that Mountain was going to do something. So then when he was like hanging around,
the Aspedians, I was like, oh, the Aspedians told no one. They're only warning Hilo.
And it's it's so bothersome to me where it's just like, oh my gosh, why would you hang around? Like, get out of there as fast as you freaking can. But at the same time, you don't want to like draw attention to the situation. So
Right. So he was trying to like sneak out
mhm.
carefully. He was like, hey, there was a family emergency. We have to leave. And Aimata's like, well, you're obviously lying. Your perception says you're lying. And as she asks why he's going, she is suddenly stabbed in the neck by Emma, who turns out
Who
to
was
be
an
part of
aide.
the Venn family, who was the man in the last book who tried to overthrow the mountain.
Yep.
And Aimata kicked out all of his daughters and wife, and then killed all of his sons. And I remember the last book being like, why would you do that? You're a woman. That's such a dumb move. And it turns out it was because she got stabbed in the neck.
Move.
Um,
She often underestimates other women.
yes, she does. Internalized sexism.
Mhm.
So Ike kills Emma immediately and throws her out of a window. Ike is bleeding to death. The Copen man is like, we should get help. And then Hilo is realizing like he's standing between everyone and the door. And he's like, no one's going to fight me on this. Everyone's just going to kind of look away and let Aimata die.
Well, because Hilo's like, I'm blocking the way, so who would fight me when I'm at full strength? So he's literally just kind of like standing there, like kind of watching, like, how's this gonna go down? I think I'll just watch her die.
Yeah. And so everyone kind of watches them. And she throws herself out of a window.
So this is shocking.
Oh.
I'm reading this. Aimata throws herself out, like goes and jumps out a window, and I'm like,
she jumps out the hole in the window. She just threw
Emma out of. But I did not expect that. But she's just like,
I
have no
was
other
about
options.
to die, and then I was like, nope, I'm not going to go down like this. I'm going to throw myself out a window, and she like falls down to the car below, slams into the car, and like Hilo walks out to it, and she like runs away, and he's like, wow, I can't believe she just did that. And then he looks at the van, and he's like, that is suspicious.
That's not going to be good.
And so then all of a sudden it says a bomb explodes and the concrete falls around Hilo. And I was like, what? What just happened? So
as if the jumping out of a window to escape wasn't shocking enough, then there's an explosion.
Yeah. And so Barrow goes to the shipyard to the address that Emma gave him and discovers Malavni. Barrow is so smart because he's like, dude, you didn't go to help everyone? And Malavni is like, I am so important. I'm here to tell the Yucatanians that they should come descend on everything and help you clanless people. That's why I'm here. I'm not here to be where the bomb was, okay? And so then Barrow finds out about the bomb that went off, and he accidentally says, then they didn't stop it. And Malavni is like, who didn't stop it? What are you talking about? Who are you working for? And just as he's about to kill Barrow, Aspenians come in and knock Malavni out and take him like out with them. And Barrow is like, you guys followed me? And they're like, of course we followed you. We're not going to trust you. And they tell him that they must get him into witness protection. He doesn't want to leave. And they're like, well, right now a huge bomb just dropped. A lot of weathermen and pillars are out, and they're going to be looking for clan lists, and they're going to kill you all. So do you want to come with us? Like, Greenbones are coming after you. And he realizes he has no choice. We cut on over to Shay, who hasn't realized that the bomb went off until her mom starts crying and she sees the news. The horn is sending people to look for Hilo and Woon. And Shay like leaves immediately. She is driven into the thick of it, and she finds Lot, who is telling everyone to look for survivors, to not like try to lift anything on their own, but to use perception as the utmost like important thing. Like, it's a huge like massacre right now, and they're just trying to find anyone who could possibly be alive. But even in this moment, they're like, so check on all of the places the mountain looks, because we can't trust them to tell us if someone is down there. He is horrified that Shay is there. He is like hinting to her, like, you are the acting pillar right now. Why are you at the, and then he says that there were witnesses who saw Ike flee. And so she's like, is there any way I can help? And he's like, well, not really, so Shay is she
ends up just like going for a walk and ends up where she always does.
Yep. She wandering through the financial district and comes to the temple. She realizes that the penitents have fled, and she's like, wow, I didn't even know that was possible. And then she senses a tiny like perception of an aura in the room, and it is Ite, those ladies always meeting in the temple.
Which I probably went there for sanctuary, because people aren't going to break Aisho and hurt someone in a worship.
Well, and she does admit that she was stabbed by Ven's daughter. She can't believe she underestimated a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And then Shay realizes that she could kill in this temple right now. She could violate Aisho and no one would be the wiser. But she may like bring Smite down upon herself, but save her family. And then as she's about to stab, I has almost like come to terms like this is going to be the outcome for herself. Then she realizes like Shay has a moment where she's like, wait, I cannot put a nationalist nephew into power. It can't be him and me, a woman who literally just had a baby and just lost her husband and her brother.
Yep.
Like, I can't do this by myself and I cannot work with that man.
She's like, it will be tragic if we all have to start over with new leadership. This will be too much, honestly, for the clans to move forward with so many changes at once. And I think it'll be too difficult for me to be the pillar in my own situation with another new pillar like that.
And so she decides to save Ite, and she tells her that it would be a mercy to kill her now. So Shay calls Anton, who takes Ite back to his place because he's like, should I take her to the hospital? And Ite is like, I can't trust anyone. A bunch of people just watched me almost die. The only people I can weirdly trust are you two. And I can't trust mountain people not to take me out so that they can put Ite Otto into power. And so Andon works on healing her, but he can only do so much. He's like, she's very close to death. And then he's like, Shay, you look really pale. Let me help you. And she's like, nope, we can only help her. And Andon has become like little no peak boy who's like, I must help. I must be of service to the clan. Why are we saving her? And I'm like, oh, Andon's totally gonna be pillar. I'm calling it now. I don't know why, but that's definitely gonna happen. Laura, you're off screen, so I can't see your face.
I'm not going to
say a word.
Deny or
confirm. They turn on the news and Otto is already speaking for the clan about the shock and grief that they've had, and how they will fight back even before they find Ite's body. And they're all like, that was a little too soon, but it also looks bad now that Shay hasn't spoken up yet and she's just sitting in Andon's apartment. So she's like, so I have to leave. And he has to watch like Hilo and Ite be marked as missing, even though Ite's in his apartment. And so he kind of keeps trying to help her. And she's like, man, I'm glad I didn't kill you way back when. I thought I was going to, like, a dozen times over.
And it's like, why would you even mention that? That he's trying to save your life and you're mentioning like, yeah, good thing I didn't kill you because that really worked out in my favor.
It turns out that Ite is not the great at bedside manner. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
But Andon's like, I'm afraid to sleep in my apartment with this woman. And so he's trying to figure out what to do. I don't blame him. Yeah. And he ends up going back to the hospital, like trying to help a little bit to make it look less suspicious and stealing some materials to help Ite. And then he's helping heal her. And then Shay brings in Na Suen, the old horn who had retired by that point. And they know that he's definitely loyal to Ike because
he's like extremely loyal to her.
He took out one of her brothers for her. So they're all standing there. It's discovered that Hilo and Woon survived as they're all standing in the apartment. And then they face off like those three Spider-Mans looking at each other where like Andon could definitely kill Ike right now because he has his Jade on. And Na Suen can like sense that he's thinking about it. But like he's kind of looking at Shay like, I don't know what to do, and they end up letting her go because it just seems like it would be too much, and like Andon had sworn not to do something like this, and he's like, did I make the right move? And Shay's like, I honestly have no idea.
And that was where I was at in that moment too, where I was like, okay, Hilo would have been so furious if he was there and like watched that, and I'm thinking, I don't know if this was the right idea. When I was reading it, I'm like, Shay, I'm with you because I'm not sure what would have been the right move. What is the right move in that moment?
I definitely agree. It seems like one of those maddening moments where I understood why everyone was doing what they were doing, but I still like agreed and disagreed in the same breath. So it was interesting. We find out, I love this section because everyone's like, it was a miracle. It was the gods that did it. And Hilo was like, it was actually just field training by Jim Sunyo who saved us. Like he taught them how to like triage and like hit their body and protect their body in certain ways to like not be killed by a bomb. And both Woon and Hilo had done that. And so they were found incredibly dehydrated and with like cracked ribs and everything, but like they were alive. We find out that the military was brought in to Keikon like immediately, or to Janloon immediately, and it helped out a lot because like they kept everything contained and safe. So the military swooped in. They were able to keep everything kind of settled in order to keep the Greenbones like all even keeled and the clanless from taking over. And then Hilo and Shay and everyone talks about the note that they found that warned Hilo, and they kind of realized that the Espinians knew about the bomb and let everyone die anyway, for their own benefit. And Hilo was like, well, we didn't take the clan list seriously. We should have. We have to take them out now. Then we cut on over and we also find out that they turn Malovny over to the Espinian side through quote unquote not torture, which was a very graphic and scary moment.
Yeah.
I did not like it. Then we reach the second interlude. We find out that Wylon Temple School was created 600 years ago by 3 Greenbones. Wylon had trainees from all of the families. They were raised in like classes and had great training, and now there were many schools like nowadays. It talks about how the current school campus was created 65 kilos west of Janloon after the Many Nations War by merging 3 secret trading locations. During the Shatarian occupation, it talks about Ugantan, who was saved by Carl Sennington way back when, and how they, formed the One Mountain Clan. We find out in chapter 30, it's 19 years later, and Doc Lusignan has died. Hilo and Andon attend the funeral in Espinia.
Is it 19 years later, or is it 19 years? What was the date?
It was 19 years and a couple months.
Oh, okay.
So I never say the month. That's on me. I usually am just like, well, it's 19 years later.
For some reason, I was like thinking, like, I always was reading it like as how many years Hilo had been Pillar. And then
sorry, it's 19 years of Hilo being the Pillar. I apologize. No, you're right.
Yeah,
I just said it wrong. Anytime I say 19 years later, assume it's 19 years after Hilo became Pillar, because that's how
honestly I really loved
I loved this so much.
That was how Fonda like kept us on track with where we were at in this book, was where it would say like 19 years or year 19 second month, or year 19 7th month, or whatever. And I'm like, I love this because it's kind of poetic in its own way of showing how long we have been on this journey and how long Hilo has been on this journey and how much has changed throughout this period of time.
I love this premise so much because it feels like the other 2 books were like pure setup for this epic family saga, where we got to see like it was almost like you're seeing like 2 books of prequel for like a main event, and this book could almost stand alone of like, oh, this is all the machinations that happened. It's very interesting, and I loved it so much. But so it's 19 years after Hilo became Pillar, and we find out that Doc Lusignan has died. Hilo and Andon attend the funeral in Espinia, and it's a somber affair. However, Remy from Resville, who is now called the Bad Keck, who they put into power to keep the mountain out in the last section, he arrives.
He's a problem.
He's super rude. He like tries to put himself on the same footing as Hilo. Andon is horrified and like kind of talks down to him, and Hilo's like, please don't do that. Like, we have to keep people nice. We can't.
We need to keep the peace here. Like, even if he's shitty, we just can't do that.
The next day, the Kekanese Espinians join together and discuss how they pretty much like want to join this coalition to make Jade more appropriate. And they kind of just describe being a model minority, where it's like, oh, if we're just so good that they can't tell us we're outlaws, then we might be able to use Jade. And I was like, oh, that's a little bit of a flawed metric.
I picked up on that as well and was like, I don't like that.
So they're like, well, we want to get rid of like all of the gambling and the cockfighting and like lower end entertainment we have in Espinia to get them to lift restrictions. Remy is like, no, I'm not going to do that. We're powerful. And they're like, well, we can't act like the crews because they come down harder on us than they would the crews. And he's like, nope, I'm not going to pretend like, and he kind of insinuates that he should be Hilo's lantern men or like on the same level. And Hilo is like, you didn't want that. We said we would give you money and you would have your own life. And that's what you have. So do not speak to me like we are on that level, because we are not. And he's like, well, I'm not going to do anything different with my life. I'm going to stay in power. I'm going to stay strong. And then a couple other people leave from that. And Corey is like, well, we weren't expecting everyone to fall in line, so this is a pretty good turnout. And
it's like,
Andon,
Corey, you need to have better standards. Come on.
And Andon is horrified by Remy, and like he and Hilo leave, and Hilo's like, why do you care so much? And Andon is like, we made him, Hilo. Like, we were the ones who put him into power. And he's like, yeah, and it was the right decision for then. It's just gonna hurt us now. This is how life is, Andon.
And honestly, I love both of these takes because Hilo is very right where it was like, you know what, we have to do certain things when they're right at the right time. But unfortunately, this one didn't work out. And Andon is someone who takes the every single action that he makes so personally and feels like he is the one personally responsible for this.
Right.
And I can totally relate to both of those things where I've like had interactions and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I feel responsible for this, even though I'm not the one that directly did X, Y, or Z. And I've also been in situations where I'm like, well, you know what? This had to happen at this time because that's when it was the right time.
Right. And so they kind of leave it at that. We cut on over to Nico, who is now quote unquote all grown up, is like
I think he's like 19 or 20.
He's like 19 or 20. He's like been less and less about that clan life. Like he's sleeping around a little bit, but he's like, these girls just want to marry me. They all know that my uncle married like the first woman he fell in love with, so they're expecting to do that.
It's kind of like the Prince Charles sensation where it's like everyone it was like obsessed with Prince Charles back in the day when they thought like, oh, we could marry him and then we could be the next queen.
Exactly. And he's just kind of like not into it. He kind of blows off the woman he's with when he's like, oh, we could like, or it's a weird thing where he like doesn't want to give her the time of day, but he's also like, oh, we can go get food. And she's just like, oh, you're not in love with me? I hate you.
Yeah.
Like, he's just like, okay, good to know.
Which seems realistic, honestly, for a situation like that.
Yeah. And she like starts playing with his back, and you find out that Hilo recently whipped him because he was out drinking one night. Someone tried to challenge him when he was like a little bit rude to him. And instead of fighting him, which was quote unquote the honorable way, he's like, I don't really care. Don't you need a car? Just take my car. Like, let's be done with this. I'm not doing this. I'm having a good time by myself. I'm not going to ruin a good night. And Hilo's like, you dishonored that man. You brought shame upon our family. You made him feel weak and like beneath you. And that's not our job.
Because really like the interaction too, like, I guess you read it a little differently than me, like the tone of that interaction, because the way that I took it was Hilo or Nico being kind of angsty in that moment and being out with friends and not really wanting to be there, and someone challenging him because he's the future pillar just to try and kind of like prove themselves, and Nico being very annoyed with it all because he's fed up and angsty about all of it, and just being like, you know what, I know your family's poor, how about you just take this car and we don't talk about this again. And Hilo comes into that situation hearing about it and is like, that's extremely rude to like tell people, hey, I know you're poor, take my car and get off my back. Like,
well, and a lot of people read it similarly to you, because I know people in the section said it felt like he had made the guy like bark like a dog for him almost.
Yeah.
And his like the kid's dad has to bring the car back the next day. It's like it brings shame upon their family that he took it. It's a lot of different stuff. And so he was like put on a higher regimented training schedule because of it. He has to like follow Lot, who's probably going to become Pillar, or not Pillar, probably going to become Horn because June is retiring. And so they send him on over to Lot. He heads over and they're pairing up with the Mountain and the military to fight the clan list. They have like certain missions that all three join together. And so they go to take out some of the clan lists from this ring. Otto, like Nico's just so over it. And he's just like, oh God, I got put with this guy. And now I have to like fight against him and pretend I care. And this is so annoying. And I
more of this like, diplomatic crap that I can't stand.
And Otto, like his people kind of show up the no peak because they just take out everyone before they were supposed to, and they're like kind of joking about it, but kind of being like, aren't we impressive? And like Otto is like always in front of the cameras and, you know, talking and giving sound bites, and Nico's just like not having it.
And also like after they finish this particular mission, there is a branding that occurs of the clanless future movement, because they basically want to humiliate them so that everyone knows who they are and they're recognized throughout town, which
This
is
is specifically the mountain and the Cobans who have been
yes.
pushing this branding of people who are clanless, even if they're tangentially related.
Yes.
So like there's a bartender who they think are who's tangentially related, and they brand him because he was deemed a sympathizer.
And this is revealed to be kind of a it doesn't exactly work the way that the Cobans had planned it to, because a lot of these people that are branded are kind of finding each other. It's kind of like a signal
card.
Exactly. It's a calling card for them to find each other and create more plans. So
and so now it's been 20 years after this section where we find out that Nico's been feeling this unrest. And Naswen is dead. Shay attends the funeral in the back, like hidden. And then she's sitting there being like, should I pray for this man? He doesn't deserve it. He was really sneaky and really awful. But also, like, don't people all say that about Hilo and my uncle, or like, and Doru? And
I was gonna say, you pray for Doru
grandpa
all the time.
Yeah.
So what's the difference?
Yeah. And she's like, I guess it's fine. And it's like, yeah, Shay, it's fine.
I think it's fine to pray for him if you pray for Doru.
Exactly. And so she walks outside, and Ait's nephew is giving sound bites to the news, being like, he was like a grandfather to me. And Ait like walks up to him, whispers in his ear, and then he like sulks away. And Shay is kind of like, well, I guess that Ait is not a fan of the way he treats the news organizations. And like, she goes home. We find out that Woon is now a stay-at-home dad. He and Tia are besties, and Tia feels like she isn't getting enough attention from Shay.
So Woon kind of like thrives in this role as a stay-at-home dad.
And Shay is like, oh, I don't give my daughter enough attention. Wah wah.
But at the same time, Shay is not that guilty. She's like guilty about it, but at the same time not that guilty about it. I don't know.
She's still like, I can't play with you right now. I must go across the street to the big house. So she runs over there. They are picking La as the next horn. It kind of is talked about how like June was like a great horn for this time because he was really good at like spies and the espionage area of things.
And also he was just like really one of those people that kind of would use the mountain when he needed to, whereas other people would just be like, no, we will never do anything with them. And he was very much about like, look, I don't care what your last name is. If I need you to help me, we're going to work on something to get something
and so
done.
They're a little bit worried about replacing him with Locke. They're like, well, he had that history with the mountain where like they killed his dad, but we think he's such a good person for this role, and he has like kind of named for it and made for it. And so they
because it's revealed in like the branding section, in that branding scene, that Lot is very uncomfortable with it because he's kind of like got a little bit of a soft side when it comes to like being unnecessarily cruel.
Yep.
Like some of the Greenbones can be.
And so it's kind of like, oh, he's the perfect boyfriend for Andon, even though Andon already has a boyfriend. So they kind of just decide that that's what's going on. And then there is a smaller Greenbone clan who comes in. You find out that like the Mountain and No Peak have been subsuming a lot of these guys because after they lost their pillar and their weatherman, they just never kind of came back from it.
Yeah, it's just been hard for them to maintain their clans without their leadership.
And the Aspedians have been giving helpful stuff to the clanless, or helpful stuff to No Peak about the clanless as well. So like No Peak is still in a pretty good position. So there is like a ceremony of them handing over their clan to the No Peak clan, and it's very like bittersweet. Then we cut on over to an Aspedian named Art Wiles, which is like, just name him Evil Evilson. But Art
Wiley,
who is like, he works for Aspedia. He's a CEO of a huge company. He's like been a major profiteer with the Jade during the Slow War. But the Aspedians are getting sick of the Slow War. There's no longer like consensus that they should be in a war for this long. They're sick of it. But he goes in and he talks to Jim Sono, who he's like, hey, you believe in the one truth, right? We're both religious zealots, right? And Jim is like, yes, thank you for noticing.
Like, I am also a truther.
And so they're like, we both believe in the one truth also. But he's like, great, because the thing is, I have a beautiful prospect for you. I have it so I can have a privatized military faction going into these war-torn areas and just taking them over. Do you want to be hired? You could be CEO and run your company, but like, I own you now. And Jim is like, I guess this is what we're doing.
He's like, you know what? Sounds great. I've never
I
been
am
this easily influenced, but something you say, Art Wiles, has got me convinced.
I am literally only here for the money, so I'm so glad you
Yeah.
asked.
I got so frustrated with how quickly he just jumped on board with that. I was like, you kidding me, Jim Sunto? Like, come on.
Sunto, you've been one of the most interesting characters, and then all of a sudden you're just religious man. What? Like, I saw that
I was
coming. Like,
this
I was very frustrated.
Totally out of left field.
I did not expect you to be Mr. Religious Man. Anyway, so then we cut on over. They're celebrating Rue's high school graduation. She's all excited about it. And then he's like talking to Nico, and he's like, well, next year we might be on campus together and you'll be a fist. And Nico's like, I won't be on campus and I won't be a fist. And Rue was like, well, come on, buddy, you can catch up. It'll be fine. And Wen is like, yeah, just catch up. Just work hard. You'll do it. And then Jaya is sitting over there like, no one talk about this right now. It doesn't seem like a good idea. And then
Jaya's like, can you all just shut up? Because this is terrible conversation to be having at this moment.
And so then Rue was like, well, what do you mean? And Nico's like, yeah, so I'm not going to be a fist. I'm not doing this. I will not do it. And like Hilo was kind of like, oh, okay, I could be a cool dad. I could be understanding. You know that like Lot Jin didn't want to be a fist and now he's a horn, and like he didn't want to be a finger.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't want to be part of the clan. And so like, yeah, that's totally fine.
Convinced him? Me with a motivational speech. And I'll do the same for you, son. Come out back. Let me talk to you real quick, give you a donut, beat you a little bit, and you'll be convinced.
And he's like, no, I got a job offer and I accepted it. And Hilo's like, you did this without telling us? You want to bring shame on your family like that? And Nico's like, yeah, so like you wouldn't agree with me anyway, so I just did it because I'm kind of over this conversation. And
then it's revealed that the job is for Jim Sunto's company
as a mercenary.
Mm-hmm.
And Hilo freaks out, as Hilo does. But like he literally goes to attack Nico, and Wen gets up and leaves the room, and Jaya is like, dude, none of us have ever had mom leave a room on us. You really messed up.
Right.
And so then Hilo is like, you will go back on this. You will not do this. This is done. And Nico is like, no, it's not. I won't do this. And Hilo tries to shame him with like, what would your dad think? And he's like, you mean my dad who died because of the clan and I never got to meet? Or he's like, what do you think your parents would say?
Your parents.
And he's like, yeah. And he means Hilo and Wen. He goes, you've brought shame on your parents. And Nico goes, well, you guys are my parents. Do you mean my dad, who you say was this bastion of goodness and he was killed by the clan? Do you mean that one? Or do you mean my mom, who you murdered for being a traitor? Do you mean that? I actually don't know how they would react to this. And Hilo like feels just deeply like, I don't know the right word. Sorry. He just feels deeply like Nico has gone away from him and isn't his son and isn't the person he knew when he like has confusion. It's
a sense of like, I feel like what if I were to like put emotions into Hilo in this moment, I feel like he almost thinks that he had gotten off kind of scot-free from this whole situation, that years ago he had explained it away and he'd been a good dad and everything was okay. And it's like, you didn't do what you needed to do to help this child in the way that you should have. You tried to explain away something to him when he was young in a way that was incorrect and unhelpful. And now you're in a situation years later where he's dealing with the trauma of that still, and also dealing with having to take on so much, like so many people's hopes and dreams and so many things that people are hoping and wishing for of him. And also like the expectations of being like his father and his uncle. And it's an impossible weight to carry. And also he's dealing with a ton of trauma. So you can't go into that situation like Hilo does and be like, what the heck? I thought we already dealt with this.
And he does that one moment when like Nico chastises him, he sees Lan in him. So he's like, oh, this is just seeing my brother, but in a different format, one I didn't expect to have to see. And so he does threaten Nico, saying like, if you leave, if you do this, you will not be a part of our family. And he like says like, you will break your mother's heart. And Nico does pause at breaking Wen's heart, but he does end up leaving.
Mhm.
Then Hilo being Hilo goes to Jim Sunto's office, kills some
Threatens
people,
him.
threatens him, and he's like, you will let my nephew go. And Jim
And he's
Sunto,
like, look, he already did the paperwork and everything. Like, nobody forced him.
and then Hilo, like Jim Sunto at that moment was like, oh, I thought it was all just a bunch of stories about Hilo, but apparently he is viciously dangerous, just like everyone told me. And he's like actually,
obviously, you idiot.
And he's like obviously scared of him, but he's like, I don't know, it'd be really good for business if I kept the kid, because like it's hard for me to get Greenbones over to my side. So if I get Greenbones over to my side, it'll work in my
This
favor.
might convince some others to join up.
And Hilo is like, dude, you don't want to do this. I do not forget and I do not forgive. And this will come down on you so hard. So, like, just remember, you chose what worked for you in the short run, but not in the long run. Oh, and during this, Jim Sunto is also like, look, I'm military. I'm not Kekanese. He can't touch me. It would be a huge violation. And Hilo's, yeah, right now. I'm not gonna mess with you. And so then
he's basically like, you're not safe forever. And I have means to come after you, so don't think I won't.
So Andon, we find out, has been flying back and forth from Espenia. He's still working to get like bioenergetic medicine stuff off the ground. He knows that John Remy, the bad Keck, has been getting power and more power, and it's just not good. And he's kind of just been overworked. Like, he's working with all of them, but it's just not working for him. So he goes up. You find out he's been dating Juria, who they're going to be moving in together. They were set up by Wen, and
Wen set him up.
I know. Sweet. And it's so nice, but like, they're eating dinner together. Well, they have sex, and then they're eating dinner together. And it is like, hey, do you want to come to the New Year's festival with the Nobi clan? And he's like, it took me, and he's thinking inside, like, oh my gosh, I was so nervous to ask Hilo, and like, Wen already did it. And Hilo's like, I really don't care. But then also, Anton is smart enough to be like, yeah, he would have cared if we could have had children, because this man is Abuke, and it wouldn't have been okay if it was an Abuke woman, and we would have brought shame on the family by procreating. His boyfriend is like, yeah, I don't want to go to that. Like, I don't want everyone to think that my life is based on you, and I'm only getting where I got because like I'm sleeping with you.
And also, he's deeply uncomfortable with the clan. Honestly, like he's uncomfortable with things that they do, and he's like, I kind of don't want to be associated with that. I don't want my career connected to that. And I deeply care about you, but I don't want to be connected to the clan.
Right. And Andon is like, kind of like, but the clan made you, but we helped you. We're helpful. And he's like, not really. Like, no. You guys just have the power. So you bestowed the power on us, but that doesn't mean I like that you have the power. But they're interrupted by Nico, like, running in and talking to Andon and being like, can I stay with you for a while? So Andon goes over to the house. Jaya's like, he's in an awful mood, Uncle Andon. I wouldn't talk to him. And it's like, Jaya, get out of here.
Jaya is just like something else.
Yeah. So Hilo is sitting there. He's super upset. And Andon is like, don't do this. And he's like, what? And he's like, don't rain down your guilt and your like hatred that this is happening on Nico. It's not his fault. He's just a kid. He's doing what he thinks is right for him. Like, you can't act like this.
And I love the response that he says, or the moment where Andon makes a comment about like, look, I have been in this situation, and please do not write him out of the family. That just tell him that you support him and that you'll be there for him, even if you don't agree with his decision. Like, he needs your support, even if you do not agree.
And he's like, we can't do that. We'd be weak. And he's like, okay, just tell him personally that, like, even if you have to like brutally talk about him in the press, that you will be there for him if he needs you, because if you don't, then he may need you, and you're not going to be there to help him in that moment. And that will be horrible. And he's like,
press doesn't matter. You can say whatever you want to the tabloids, but you need to be there for him.
And he goes, and he's like, well, no peak will lose its heir. And he's like, he won't be fit to be pillar. And he's like, well, he may be, and you're not going to give him that opportunity because of like this one situation. And then Andon threatens him, and he's like, if you don't fix this, I'm leaving No Peak, and I will not help you guys ever again. And Andon is hugely important to their Espenian work. And
like, he's become like their go-to guy for
person.
So many things. Like, whenever there's any kind of medical issue, they're like, Andon, get over here. Like, come on.
And Andon is kind of like, look, a lot of my life has taught me that like I actually get a choice to be a caller or not. Like Nico, Shay, you guys don't get choices. I get a choice. I could walk away from this right now and no one would think twice about it anymore. So like you have a decision to make. And Hilo's like, are you threatening me? And he's like, no, I'm asking you to prove to me that like this is a family I want to be a part of, because like this won't be worth it. And he's like, well, he's staying in my apartment right now. In 2 weeks, he's getting to the airport. So you better be there. Then we cut on over to John Remy. We find out he's a very paranoid man for good reason, because everyone's trying to murder him because everyone hates John Remy.
Which kind of made me laugh a little bit.
I know. And he's like, I have to send people to go look into my food. He has to like live in 3 different apartments.
Can you imagine having to be that paranoid and then still continuing to be such a jerk? Like, I can't even, like, be nice to people, clean up your act instead of being sorry so terrible. Sometimes.
Anyway, so he hears that someone's been asking around about him, and he's like, I must meet this man. And you find out that it is Mike Tar, and Mike Tar is there looking for a job. And he's like, what would a Kekanius greenbone like you be doing in a place like this? And Mike Tar,
he's like, immediately interested.
Yeah. And he's like, well, how do I trust you? And he's like, look, I've been disowned by my family. I need the money. I need to do something. I need to be useful. Could you use me? And he's like, well, I don't know about this, but also like, I do need someone to prove to me, like, what do you really want? And he's like, I want Jade. Like, I know you give Jade to those who are useful to you, and I want it. So that's why I'm here. And he goes, well, I'm going to give you some tools to use for now, and then we'll see how it goes.
Hannah, can I tell you that when I first read this, I was crushed.
I was so worried. I was so scared.
I was crushed because I thought, oh my gosh, Mike Tar, no, please, Tar,
please
no,
don't do this to your family.
And I'm like, yeah, it's bad enough that he had to be exiled because of something so tragic, and then I'm like, now you're getting involved in this. Oh, I was so crushed.
I know. So we cut back on over to Nico, who's leaving on a jet plane. Don't know when he'll be back again. But he's saying goodbye to Andon. He's like, in his mind, he's like, Andon's always been my favorite. He doesn't force me to do anything I don't need to. Like, I could.
Isn't this just tragic? Because Lon was always Andon's favorite, and so I find it so sad that Nico has found that refuge in Andon. The Andon found in Nico's father. Oh,
it's so nice. But he's like, Andon's kind of like, look, you're leaving in a different situation than I was in. So like, please be careful. Please come back. And it talks about how like Rue just doesn't understand why Nico would throw away his position. And Rue also has the fatal flaw of like, you think you would be one way because you do not know anything else. Like he's only known.
Just to clarify, Rue had gone to Nico to try and talk him out of it. Yes, Rue is in a position where Rue doesn't understand because he's in a completely opposite situation. And it's easy from being on the outside to say, well, you should do this, or I would do this, when you're not actually in the situation.
And that, so yeah, in a flashback, you find out that Rue traveled to Nico, and Rue's like, if I could be Pillar, I would do anything to do this. Why aren't you doing it? And Nico's like, because I'm miserable. I never got the opportunity. You got freedom. I didn't. I was only expected to do one thing.
And it's true. Like Rue does get opportunities that the other children do not get because he has different expectations because he's a stone eye. And so he gets to study what he wants, and he gets to have a dog, and he gets to, kind of have friends and do activities and stuff like that the other kids are not really. And
even at the family dinner, Hilo's like, yeah, college is to figure out what you want in life. Go figure it out. And
it's like he would never say that to Nico.
And so then Nico's about to get on the plane, but he feels Hilo come up, and Hilo's like, Andon, I want to talk to my son alone. And he's like, it'll only take a minute. And he goes, does mom know you're here? And he goes, yes. And he's like, well, his mom still didn't show up, so she's furious. And he knows that she's the one who will hold a grudge. And he goes like, I'm not going to change my mind. And Hilo's like, don't worry. I've given you like all. Hilo froze all of his accounts. Like, haha, money will get this kid back. But then he's like, look, I gave you back your accounts. here's a calling card to call if you need any help, information on like every weatherman's office and any place you can find a safe house, just to like be careful. um
Mm-hmm.
and then he says, otherwise you're on your own. And so he wants to like be childish in the moment and get rid of it, but he knows he can't. And so he says goodbye. Um, and he said, like, I would, and Hilo's kind of like, I would burn everything to the ground if I thought it could get you back, but I know that it won't, and I love you. And he's like, I love you enough to see that you have the right to hate me. And I'm like, oh, that's a beautiful line.
Yeah.
But then he's like, don't
honestly, this moment was, I think, such a moment of growth for Hilo. And it shows how far he has come, honestly, because like you can see how having this kind of reaction and actually showing up at the airport and like having considered things, this is not something that he would have done in the past.
No. This is 20 years from old Hilo. Like,
yes,
he's grown a lot.
You know, it's one of those things. It took 20 years, but
he's there.
We still appreciate the growth.
He's still a pillar, so he immediately goes to talk to his spies that he's sending after Nico to infiltrate Jim Suto's company.
Got some fingers that he paid off, and he's like, "Look, your sister needs an organ transplant, and your family needs a new house. Okay, we'll make that happen, but we're gonna basically say that you're traitors. So,
so sorry, you're gonna be like lamb.
Your family knows you're not traitors,
but everyone else
spy on my
hates
son.
you. But go spy on my son. Figure out how to bring down Jim Suto and get back to me." It's like, oh, you're still Hilo.
Keep me in the loop. I'll keep you guys paid.
So then we find out that Barrow came back to John Loon for no reason, because
just because he was bored.
Like, and the Espenians sent him to the Uiwan Islands, and he's like, I hate it here. I need to leave. And so he like,
it's too peaceful, and no one speaks the same language. Like, I hate it. Like, what?
And so he finds out that like the ROE definitely have Malavni working for them, and he's like, oh gosh, they're all such hypocrites. So he goes back on over to John Loon. He goes to his old haunting grounds. He meets the old bartender who we saw earlier get branded, and he's like, what's that on your face? And he's like, man, you've been gone a while, huh? And so he's like, well, it was branding, but like, don't worry, it's a calling card now. We're still working to get the clan list like up and above everyone else. And actually, everyone hates being branded. No shocker there. Like, it's unnecessary.
It's extremely painful.
And we can't do anything about it. And so Barrow's like, I don't know. I don't really want to do anything. Like, come on. And the bartender's like, look, we have a better idea. They try to take it out by taking out all of the leaders, but really we just need them to fight each other. And Barrow's like, not a bad idea.
Sounds like something we've tried before.
So then we cut on over to Rue, who's like first year college, #living life. And he's getting special treatment by certain people who like recognize his name, but he's like
the librarians and stuff. And so then he's like, you know what? I'm going to take advantage of this to get some nice library perks.
I wish. But anyway, they like, he's kind of sitting there and he's like, man, Nico would hate this and power walk away from it, but like, I'm okay with it. People love me.
Well, and it's a situation too where Rue explains like he's gone so long being out of the media and everything that he has kind of lived a little bit anonymously and hasn't had a lot of these call perks. So it's kind of a nice change of pace for him for a little bit to be recognized and kind of get some things handed to him, because that's not really ever happened to him like it has the other people in his family.
Well, it also talks about like certain things for him are just like inconveniences, because he's like, oh, my friends can't invite me to the pool party in the mountain area. And it's like, yeah, it's not like, hey, if I go there, I might be murdered for my Jade. Like, it's such like, oh, my two friends had to go to a different university than me. It's like, your problems are not the same as Nico, who is like, hey, we really want you to take over this crime organization. Could you do that? Like,
right.
Not the same. And so Rue ends up going to this social club called Charitable Society for Jade Non-Reactivity. And it's all a bunch of people who are like, hey, it's 9 Kekani Stone Eyes and 5 Abuke students who like want to build up power for people. And he like meets with this one guy named Dano who like is like who's like, we need to like fight for our own power. We can't be held under the tyranny of the Jade system. And Rue was like, get a load of this guy over here.
Here's the thing. This reminds me like of your typical like college student that's just like having awakenings to things and is like, we're gonna fight, we're gonna do this, everyone get on board. And I think it's interesting to have Rue be in on these meetings and be like, I have some experience in this, from a very personal standpoint. And I don't know if you're totally right.
But like, they're all like, oh, I hate everything that your family stands for, but we're going to be best friends. And it's kind of like just a drinking club. Like the one guy is always hungover and always partying. So they're just college students saying a lot of stuff they don't quite understand. But he is like, they kind of were talking about like, hey, your family upholds like bad, like pretty much like you said, like ableist tendencies to be like, oh, people who don't have Jade are less than, and like they can't do that. And they're like, they treat it like we're superstitious nightmares. And Rue is like, my family can't be blamed for hundreds of years of like bad thoughts and actions. And they're like, yeah, but they're upholding the system, Rue. And he's like, you guys are so silly. My dad can't hate Stone Eyes. His son is a Stone Eye.
He married a Stone Eye. He can't hate them.
It's like, oh, Rue, it's system versus individual discussion.
My dad loves me. And it's like, yeah, but did you notice the difference in the way that you're treated? Oh.
And then he's like, but remember that one time that they helped solve the war? And Donna was like, one good thing does not good make Rue. Like, come on. And then Rue also like tells Jaya about it. And Jaya's like, so maybe we should probably murder that kid because he sounds like he might be a problem. And
Jaya's like, I think I'm going to tell a lot about this because this seems off.
And they are like keeping the name of suspicious people for clanless activities. And so Rue has to be like, it's all good. Never mind. Like, but
forget about it. I didn't Rue, say it.
They're not adding to a dangerous system. Like, not at all. And so, yeah, he's like, I disagree with them, but I find some stuff interesting. Then we click on over to the 21st year, and Jaya is having her year 8 pre-trials. She's working really hard, and like the family goes to support her, and she does her channeling challenge and she kills the mice, and Tia starts wailing in the crowds to the point where like they have to take her home. And Shay is
revealed that she's just like really sensitive, and they have a hard time
to be murdered.
Yeah, they have a hard time explaining like the violence and some of the things that they do through the clan to her because she doesn't understand it. Like she feels very
she's also
upset.
She's also like 6.
She's like 6. But still, I mean, Hilo's children were not reacting that way to like, how old was Nico when Hilo explained? He was like 7 or 8 when he explained, 8. I killed your mother. And he's just like,
it's time you learned.
Like, you need to be an adult about this, but because you're 8, I'm going to tell you I killed your mom. And it's like, what? That's a little young. So it's not like Tia is that much younger than Nico finding out about some of this stuff,
but Nico turned out so well.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying. I'm just saying though that it's like
that's their mentality.
That Tia is a very different child, more sensitive and sweeter, than Hilo's children by far.
Shay is horrified by this, where she's like, how do I toughen my daughter up? And Hilo's like, I never thought
there's not much time before she needs to go to school.
And Hilo's like, I never thought my hard ass little sister would ever come to me for parenting advice. And she's like, I'm not doing that. And she's like, well, I am doing that.
She's like, I'm not asking for parenting advice.
And then she's like, look, I just think my daughter might think I'm not a good person. And he's like, yeah, little kids are really judgmental, Shay. Like, don't take the advice of a child. And so Shay is just like, well, everything I was working for seems to be bad. I don't know. They also talk about how the Mountain Clan, like every time they take a step goes against them. How like Mata probably doesn't love that Ayato is such a nationalist because like it's like, well, she has like Yucatanians and Baruchans in her employ, and they're not saying.
But it's also something that she kind of set up.
Yeah,
where it's like she started a lot of this and encouraged it, and a lot of her speeches were very nationalist. So it's people probably think she's on board with it, and then they're just not connecting the dots to some of her outward business connections.
And so Shay is like, well, I actually think like we've been moving. We're in a stalemate. I think we should try to go to Shotar. And Hilo's like, well, Hami thinks that's a bad idea. Like, we've already gone over into other areas. Why can't we do something where we can get a better hold? And she's like, look, I get it. Like, they have an unsurmountable advantage because Aitmata has alliances with the Matios and Shotar, but like, I think we could do this. And she lays out her plan. And Hilo's like, look, if that's something you want to do, convince Hami, get me the information, and like, we'll do it. But I need you to do that. And it seems like they're in a little bit more of a chill era of their lives where they're still trying, but not quite as hard. And they're like a lot more calculating about this stuff.
It's kind of like a season of life for them where they are focusing more on like their family and are in a period where they are kind of just like, let's see how we can move some chess pieces around, but we're not too invested in the game.
But then all of a sudden it's interrupted when Hilo gets a phone call and Jaya's been arrested. And so you find out that Jaya has been partying with some friends, and one of her friends was flirting with Jaya's ex-boyfriend, who Hilo's like, were you sleeping with him? And Jaya was like, oh my gosh, Dad, do you actually want to know the answer to that? Like, come on.
She's like, obviously I have sex. And she's like, I've had a lot of sex. And he's like, what?
And so her friend was like flirting with this guy and went up to the room, and then she smuggled Jade out of the school. And so she felt the perception of her friend being in trouble and came up, and her ex-boyfriend was trying to assault her friend. And so she stabbed him in the groin to defend her friend. And Hilo's like, dude, that guy was like, that kid is in a lot of power. And she's like, and like, he still shouldn't have assaulted my friend, Dad. And it's like, well, she makes a good point, but also she's doing lots of stuff wrong.
But then the family of the friend shows up.
And they're super thankful.
They're so grateful. And they say something like to Hilo about like, we have heard that you are like a really thoughtful and kind person who care about your friends deeply. And we're so glad that your daughter is like that as well. And I'm like,
Hana is also sitting there being like, I almost deserved to be assaulted. I was flirting with him because I knew you two had broken up. And she's like, yeah, don't victim blame yourself, Hana. Like, get up. Like,
yeah, Jaya says that. And she's like, no, it's not your fault. Like, you don't deserve to be assaulted. Like, no.
And so it's also noted that like Hilo's like, couldn't you have handled the situation differently? And Jaya is kind of like, you would have never asked the boys to do this. I want to be horned someday, so I have to be powerful. And Hilo like didn't realize his daughter might want to be on the greener side of things. And he's like, well, maybe you should look at other alternatives on like the more gold side of things, like your aunt. And she's like,
maybe work with your Aunt Shay.
Boring Aunt Shay? I'm not going to do that. She and Woon are awful. Like, she's like freaking out. And she's like, Dad, you like always said if we were powerful enough, we could do this. I want to do this. And she's like, and I haven't had enough experience, and I need to be able to fight. And a lot of people won't give me the opportunity because I'm your daughter, not your son. And Hilo realizes,
and because she's a woman, like she can't duel and stuff like that because people won't accept duels from a woman. So
especially from a woman whose father is the pillar, because they think he'll retaliate in a way that he wouldn't for his own sons. He realizes he hasn't like taught her to deal with the intricacies of this. And he's like, maybe I should have you talk to your mom and your aunt and a couple of the fists and fingers who are women. And she's like, yeah, maybe you should.
She's also in a position too at the moment, because Nico is gone, that a lot of people are trying to throw their sons at her. And like, she is accepting some of this just because she's like, you know what? I would like to sleep around
have
a little
sex.
bit.
Like, yeah.
But she's also just like, I do not care about that at all.
Yeah. So
Jaya is in a position where she's getting a lot more like opportunities from boys and families at the moment, because they want to like get involved and possibly be related to the next pillar.
Yes. And it's always based on her womanhood, which she's super frustrated with. So then we cut on over to the bad Keck, who's having a ceremony to give 3 men their jade. And from this moment, I was like, oh, he's dying in this chapter. Like, I was like, this will not be shock. He's going to be dead. I trust Mike Tar to kill him. And so he gives Mike Tar jade, and he's thinking about how useful Mike Tar has been. He's done everything he's asked with like no questions.
He's been so like, loyal, no questions. Does
the model citizen,
the best job. Like, I could not ask for a better assassin. Like, absolutely A+ work.
And he's like, man, I hate those Kekanese, but like this guy, they really know how to make them. And it's like,
Like he
yes.
does a wonderful job. Whenever I tell him to kill somebody, he doesn't just leave the bodies; he burns them so there's no evidence. And it's like,
This man is the worst. And so he gives it to Mike Tar, and Mike Tar immediately just murders him and murders
he gives
everyone
him,
else in the
yeah, he
room.
gives him Jade in this ceremony, and Mike just goes straight for his throat.
And Mike also, like, he's much more well versed in Jade, so he's able to take all them out. And he
Oh yeah,
turns
Tar is just fierce.
and so then he's arrested, and he has like one phone call. He calls Hilo immediately, and Hilo is like, it's good to hear your voice. And he's like, it's good to hear from you. And he's like, we have a lawyer for you. Don't admit anything. Just wait. But then Mike Tar is like, yeah, so like this was self-defense. And like I was one of his like people. He thought I was two-timing him. I wasn't. So like, let me give you all the things I know about his organization. And he like takes down the organization. And then Corey shows up, and Corey's like, could you not have given them all that information for me,
It's like,
please?
you said
Like,
too much. We could have used this as leverage.
and Mike Tar is like, yeah, I don't really care about that. And so he's like, so what was in this for you? And Tar just says a death of consequence. And then he goes, don't worry about it. It's a Greenbone thing. And then Corey during this conversation said, Andon came and saw you, didn't he? And then we find out that 18 months before, Andon made a trip to Espenia and went to Tar. And Tar's like,
He
oh
was
my
like
gosh,
living in a little neighborhood by himself, doing his lawn.
mowing his lawn. And he thought he was there to let him know that like Hilo wanted him back. He was hoping, and Andon feels awful, but like breaks his spirit. And he's like, yeah, he doesn't really know. Like, I'm here right now. And he talks about how they need help with this guy named Remy. And
he brought him pictures of his nieces and nephews, and he's like so thrilled to get pictures of Cam.
And Cam's in his year 6 of the academy, and like he's just so excited to see anything from home. And Andon's like, these are yours
like,
to keep.
Tell him
like,
I really miss him.
And so
it's so sad.
He knows that like Andon's there for business for No Peak. He is loyal to No Peak, and he agrees to help him out. And like he also like he's kind of like, you're kind of the only person I can trust to do this. You're the only person who can get close to him. He's super paranoid. And he goes like, Andon,
he's gonna love that you were exiled, and he's gonna look into you and just love your connections and what you can do. So he'll be instantly interested.
And so Tara is like, is this helpful to Hilo, Jen? And Andon's like, yes. And he goes, this John Remy, does he deserve to die? And Andon like didn't think that Mike Tar would ever think that way. But then he realizes like he's had many, many years to look back on his life and have regrets.
Yeah.
And so Andon like tells him the truth about like all the bad things he does. And he says he's not the type of Greenbone who should be allowed to exist. So he does deserve to die as much as anyone in our world does. And Tara's like, I really appreciated that you were honest. You didn't just lie to me the way you would to non-Greenbone, And he says like, don't worry about a thing, kid. And he's like, will you please tell them I love the kids, And so it talks about like how all of his effort means that the Bad Kex gang goes down really quickly. And so it says like, the line had been drawn. No one's doing anything out in the open anymore. Everyone's fallen in line. And then you also find out that Mike Tar kills himself after this. It talks about his last day. It's really sad. It says he was like really jovial. Terrible. He was talking about his brother who was dead for 18 years, and he hoped that there was life after death, as some people said. And so the calls bring him home kind of secretly, because they know that like his fiance's family in Row, her family would be angry that the pillar had ended Tar's exile even in this one final way. But they have him buried next to Mike Ken. And this is the section, I'm emotional already, but it talks about them all at the gravesite. Like Wen is sobbing. Hilo is unable to do so because she's so emotional, and he's just like letting her speak for them in their grief. And then Andon comes up to Hilo's side, and he says, I understand if you blame me. And he says, like, Tar was the best, the only one who could have done it. I don't blame you any more than I blame myself. And then he says that he was angry at Andon for a very long time when he refused to wear Jade. But he goes, I'm now thankful you're not a fist. And then he says, I need one of my brothers to live. And that part makes me so sad. And that's actually the end of this section. We end on a very sad note.
Honestly, like all of this stuff with Mike Tar, like I felt like a really I don't know. I don't think I ever felt connected to this character, but I
Mm-mm.
felt really sad for the reasons that he was exiled and everything. Like how tragic for him to have to come up in the clan that way and deal with so much and never really process it, and then get into a bad relationship and take someone's life in such a horrible way.
Mm-hmm.
Then to be exiled and still show such loyalty
Yeah.
to the people that exiled you, your family who you miss dearly. And that whole section where they're talking, like from the point where Andon goes and meets with Tar to the point that they like disclose, like, oh yeah, like they didn't even make it to trial or anything because he knew it wasn't going to be good for him, so he just took his own life. And I all throughout that I was just crying. Like that
I
was
feel
so
like
emotional for me.
if I ever reread these books, I'm going to pay the most attention to Mike Tar, like, because I feel like he was such a background player in the first book, and then he came up in the second book, you know. And I feel like there
Mhm.
is like a tragedy in Mike Tar that like you don't have, because it's like a very specific type of tragedy where he isn't a
Mhm.
forefront character. He's a background character, but you know so much of his internal, like you see his internal struggles a lot more than experience them through his own
Mhm.
voice. And that is like in and of itself very tragic to read about when
Mhm.
you're reading from the outside looking in.
And I think
And
it's
like,
so easy to just interpret that character in the first couple books as like the character, like we know like the history of the Mike family, that they were like mountain people that ended up in No Peak and were not really trusted
mhm,
until they became friends with Hilo and
mhm,
gained his loyalty, and that they worked their way up by being just brutal warriors, like the toughest people ever. And then when Mike Tar became the Pillar Man, his role can be read from the reader's standpoint, if you're like you said, if you're not paying too close of attention, as just being extremely violent and just almost like a cackling assassin type
mhm.
situation where you don't pay that much attention to it because you're like, yeah, this is just the violence guy,
Yeah.
and we need somebody to kill someone, we're going to send Tar. And that's why it's so easy to kind of like overlook him. And then I think when we started paying the most attention was with these domestic disputes
Mhm.
with Ayn Rand, and then the tragedy of that situation, and now coming full circle with him growing and recognizing, like, do I have to, like, recognizing I need to process whether
Mhm.
people are deserving of the things that people are asking me to do to them before I actually carry out these actions.
Mhm.
And then moving forward and making decisions like that instead of just instantly acting. That was emotional for me. Like, all of this was,
Well, and if
ugh,
you think
I
about it,
was really crying.
his foil is Andon in a way, because Andon also had a similar situation where he was put into incredibly bad situations for his own personal and mental
And said
health,
no.
and said no because he could sense that he was going down a dark path that he couldn't come back
Mm-hmm.
from. And so Andon came back from it,
Yeah.
and he still worked in the community in a way, because he wasn't saying the community
Mm-hmm.
was bad. He was saying his own purpose in the community was bad. And Mike Char was someone who did do that and then like ended up
Never
doing,
questioned.
and he never questioned. And then he was affected so much that like he like it, even in this section he admits that he could never like be with another person again because he couldn't trust himself because of what
Mm.
happened in his last
With
relationship.
Ro, yeah.
And like that he is a very tragic character that I don't think if you knew that that's what to expect out of him, you kind of could overlook him. So seeing how much effect he had on the family in such a
Mm-hmm.
specific way was very heartbreaking and heart-wrenching. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a very good astute way of writing for Fonda Lee. I commend her for building this character
Oh,
because yeah.
I mean, this was just pure brilliance, honestly. Like
Like
this this was something that I'm just like, this in it of itself, this storyline, I think is just A plus 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 plus
mhm.
work. Like 5 stars, no questions.
And you almost need to see him over this 20 years to make it meaningful, because now he is like
Yes.
the middle-aged, like getting to older age person who's like he's not even old yet though. Like it's not like an old man having a last hurrah. It's a middle-aged man deciding that this is the end of the line for him. And I think that is tragic. And yeah,
and honestly, I think like getting back into like the way that the chapters start with like year 19, 7th month, all of this makes this book so much more dramatic and emotional because we're putting all these things into context where it's like time has passed. Have sat with these characters for so long and we're seeing them change and grow and be affected by their own choices and things that have happened to them. And it's just so gut-wrenching and emotional.
Yeah. Well,
Fonda, guys, why are you a genius?
I don't know, but it's so good. Well, guys, make sure that you're finishing up the book because next week we're finishing up the chapters. This will be like the last. We will read episode. To the end. It's the last plot episode of peeking into the Greenbone Saga before we get into the characters and the season finale. I can't wait for you to get to the end of this, Hannah. I know
you've made a couple predictions in this episode, which you are not. I'm not usually doing. So off the cuff, I'm usually one to call stuff and be wrong, and you are less likely to make a
wrong prediction. I can't help it. I just feel like she's setting up some stuff, and I wonder how they will end. So I can't wait to find out. But guys, make sure you're following along with us. Make sure you're joining our Discord. Like Laura said, she's been taking some recommendations over there. So you can find it in our link tree.
Give me book recommendations.
Make sure you're also following us over on Instagram, on Threads, at Our Pod. That's OWWR Pod. And for the one unmentionable one for as long as it is still standing.
If it's still there.
Make sure that you guys are rating and subscribing on iTunes or on Spotify. Those are really helpful ways to get us out there. That
really helps us out a lot. There's now like an option after you listen to an episode that you can rate it and like leave a comment, and that would be great.
That would be amazing.
On Spotify, I should say.
Okay, on Spotify, please do that because like it really helps. And also just tell your friends about us. Like that's also a great way. Just spreading
word of mouth or just sharing one of our posts.
And make sure you are purchasing The Assassin of Grins and Secrets by K.E. Andrews. And look out for a giveaway we will be hosting. K.E. Andrews will be sending us some bookish stuff to include in the giveaway. So make sure you are following along for that and trying to win it. Please make sure you're just doing everything in between. And we want to thank you all for listening with us this far.
Thanks so much. This means a lot that you're listening, and we really hope you're enjoying this season.
We hope our pain is bringing you pleasure.
I'm currently bottling my tears and sending them to Fonda Lee. She will do with them what she will.
We trust her a lot more with them than we do ourselves.
I didn't know what to do with all the bottles, so I've decided to send them to her.
Apparently, Poppy Ward did not make us cry buckets of tears, but Greenbone Saga sure made us cry bottles of them. So
I've got several bottles lined up here.
Join us next week for even more tears. Bye.
Bye.